Good morning and welcome to First Parish Church.
Chris, unmute yourself.
Can't hear her.
Okay.
She has to unmute.
Here we are. Okay. Good morning and welcome to First Parish Church of Kingston's online worship service. It's wonderful to see you all here this morning. And it matters that you are here. It matters that you're a part of this community. Your presence allows us to continue our church's history, not just from your sustaining actions, but also because of your spirit and your love. For those visiting us, a special welcome to you as well. My name is Chris Page, and I'll be serving as worship associate for this morning's lay-led service. As we close out February and the celebration of Black History Month, such a monumental topic. And we can barely scratch the surface of Black history in the United States and where it has brought us to today. So many unknown human stories. But this morning, two of our church members will look into some of the local stories and also reflect on where we find ourselves today, living the history that is yet to be written. Adam Augello will share some Kingston and First Parish stories, as well as some of his own. Later, Dennis Randall, longtime church member and political activist, will reflect on how he sees where we are today and the choices we must make. And now let us light our chalice this morning with words from Erica Hewitt, entitled, "Until All Means All." The chalice, as a symbol of Unitarian Universalism, rose as a beacon in an atmosphere of tyranny, as a sign of promise that the marginalized would never be forgotten nor ignored, because they are beloved and precious from the perspective of the holy. This morning, we remember all the people who have been told explicitly or implicitly, through police violence or government policy, through derision or dehumanization, that they're anything less than whole, anything less than beloved. As we light our chalice in our homes, may we make our lives a beacon, a symbol of our promise to draw the circle wide, a sign that we will not rest until all means all. And now I invite you to join our opening hymn, "We Would Be One."
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to
I'm walking down a street in my friend PJ's neighborhood in Roxbury. We have become best friends since we met in the psych hospital this past summer. He's just introduced me to two of his friends from his neighborhood, and we've just played basketball for what feels like forever. Exhausted, we're walking back to his place. On the right, we pass a shiny, polished new building plopped right in the middle of the fading, humbled others. Not for us, says PJ to the two friends he's walking with. Yeah, another one says, they're trying to get rid of us. Another friend counters with, they can't just get rid of us. PJ says, yeah, they can. They can shoot us and get away with it. We all keep walking, heads down. At least mine is. PJ says I'm the first and only white friend he has ever had. The tired, pained look on these Black youths as they grapple with the personal magnitude of problems that only appear tangentially to me through news sources and articles and books drove a profound sadness and anger through me. They have no choice but to struggle with these issues of gentrification, police violence against unarmed Blacks, the criminal justice system, housing discrimination, de facto segregation and stereotyping. My family and I could read about these things, could care about them sometimes if we wanted to or felt like it or had the time to or could afford to. But we did not have to confront them every day, every time we walked around the streets like these young adults did. In the past 7 years, I had lived elsewhere than Kingston for the first time, gone to college and watched our nation suffer the strife caused by rampant white supremacy and systemic racism. I'd also started working as an intern for the Kingston Public Library's local history room and as assistant archivist at our own First Parish church. As a project for my internship, I wanted to research Black history in Kingston, and I've been working on this project for several months. All of these experiences have convinced me as a whole that Black history, or as my mixed race cousin calls it, real history, is important to look at on a local level as well as a national level. In recognizing the reality of past conditions in a place like Kingston, Massachusetts, for example, we are forced to reckon with the complicity of our town with slavery and white supremacy. This historical thinking, or the process of connecting the past with the present, demystifies how we got here and why the problem of white supremacy persists. Yes, it does persist in the North and has persisted for hundreds of years in the North. As John Adams said during the 1700s, he had known, quote, the best men of the colony to hold slaves and hold a positive opinion on slavery. Several of the wealthiest men in Kingston, Massachusetts, owned Black slaves during this time. We know this from several censuses, tax inventories, and enumerations that survive in the archival record. William Seaver, a wealthy merchant and Massachusetts provincial government representative during the war, owned several Black slaves, including Adam, Flavia, Rooksby, and Thomas, who worked on his property, where his ornate house next to the telephone company building on Linden Street still stands today. Before a separate racially segregated gallery section of the first Kingston meeting house was built for the Blacks in Kingston to sit in 1753, the town of Kingston voted to have various white community members regulate blacks during the Sabbath days. Even after the segregated galleries were built for people of color in our congregation, a member of the church was appointed at the town meeting to, quote, see that they did sit there and nowhere else. This free labor of slavery for the whites of Kingston gave enterprising individuals the opportunity to engage in new professional opportunities and profits for themselves instead of having to simply work on their family farm. Some of the more ornate Georgian and federal style homes in Kingston were the result of this extra boost to a town transitioning from a household-based to a market economy. Even after slavery was gradually and slowly abandoned as an institution in the North, members of Kingston still relied on the institution in general throughout the first half of the 1800s. Ships built in Kingston, sailed by Kingston captains and owned by Kingston merchants, participated in the cotton trade between the Carolinas, New England, and Europe. In 1813, 2 cotton factories were started on the Jones River near the Trip Hammer district on Wapping Road today. What's called Wapping Road today. These looms spun the cotton that was traded for in North Carolina by Kingston ships. A dye works, a wool carding mill, and a fulling mill, where cloth was dressed and finished, also appeared in Kingston around this time, thus integrating the town to prosper from the lucrative cotton triangle of the antebellum period. The cotton which was spun on Kingston looms was also certainly picked by Southern slaves. The North had at this time absolved itself of its practice of slavery ideologically, while still being able to materially profit from it. It was, in fact, Northern manufacturing demand that perpetuated and even encouraged the importation of more slaves into the South. Seen in this light, the issue of our town's legacy of white supremacy is not so innocent. The South Shore cranberry industry was built by the labor of Cape Verdean immigrants in the first few decades of the 1900s. These immigrants lived in shacks and faced racial discrimination in their communities. There are surely more examples, but the question now remains, what can we draw from this? First, this shows us that history knows no people who are exempt from its major issues, who can buy their way out of them. But it's not necessarily a perverse sense of irony that many of the heroes of our town should be humbled in this way. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote from jail in 1963 that the biggest problem was not the KKK, but the white moderate who preferred order to justice. Included within his historical purview and his contemporary solution making was the North, and I believe this stands true still today. I would like to conclude by recognizing several Kingstonians from history who I believe rank far above many others in the content of their character, to use Dr. King's words. And they deserve recognition. Their names are John and Ella Woodbury, Lillian May Hayes, and Beulah and Zoli Fogg. In 1937, these African-American families bought a piece of land on the Kingston-Duxbury border near Tarkiln Road, where I live today, with the aim of forming a summer camp for people of color. This was Camp Twin Oaks, and once it was up and running, this camp became one of the only vacation spots on the South Shore for people of color. The fee was only $1 when it started. Accommodations included 3 meals a day, recreation, cottages for children, in addition to a heated pool, which was eventually added on. Black tourists from Boston, New York, and Chicago came to relax and enjoy our town for a vacation. I think of all the time, effort, and money put in by this family to provide a relaxing and fun environment for Northern Blacks in our own town of Kingston, and I think of them as personal heroes of mine who sacrificed resources to do something kind for others and create a safe haven for those who needed it. I also think of Jonathan Cushman, who, if the legend is true, housed runaway slaves in his place at Indian Pond Road on their way to Boston, or those from the Kingston Anti-Slavery Society, who we have evidence supported the efforts of Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison, even though the latter was thought of as too extreme by the first Parish Kingston minister, Augustus Russell Pope. These Kingstonians took risked being ostracized and condemned by their community to do the right thing, and it must have been difficult, but it was right and necessary. I hope that this historical reckoning can make us realize that living in emotional and material comfort may come at a price. It means we are profiting off of our society, which is rigged for people like my friend PJ to feel dejected and experience very real and unnecessary threats, and is rigged to help whites get where they want to be in life through advantages they didn't earn. I want you to think about where people interested in the history of our town, our congregation, 100 years from now, will situate us based on our character and the choices we made while we were on this earth. We cannot keep passing the buck to future generations. We must end racism now and do whatever we can to do so. This is our problem. Let's solve it at all costs.
Thank you very much, Adam. At this time, we will receive an offering to support all the work of this congregation. This church was built and sustained by those who come to receive what they need and give what they can. This is your church. May it always be worthy of the gifts it receives from you. You may contribute by using the online giving link or texting or by mail. All of the information for this is found in your email order of worship. Please know that your gift will be gratefully received.
You're muted.
Okay, technical difficulties. In the Air Force, you used to call that a short between the headsets. That was a beautiful, Adam, and those photos. I've never seen I've never seen any of those, and that is something that should be part of the fabric of our history. I would urge that we get some of those hanging on the walls of our townhouse, so that citizens, when they come in to do their business, are aware there's more than one hue to our history. I was going to talk a lot about the past, but I think Adam did a better than superb job. Made it very real. I'd like to talk a little bit about where we are right now and where do we go from here. We are on the wet edge of history. It is our story that we are writing, and it is yet to be told. I believe that we, more so than even perhaps the Civil War, are at a crossroads and a deciding point. I'm not going to be polite. White supremacy, neo-Nazism, and fascism is at the door, and it is fighting for dominance of our republic, our town, and our lives. The outrage that people express at Black Lives Matter is very strange, because there is silence at the situation that necessitates such a movement. We don't have the luxury of standing at the sidelines and watching the parade go by. We are part of that process, and what we do with our lives with our actions and with our deeds is going to determine the kind of tomorrow our children are going to live in. I became involved, or I became active or incensed or motivated the night that I sat with my family. My stepfather was a Unitarian minister in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, First Parish Church. Kingston was always part of my history, and we sat down to watch Judgment at Nuremberg. That was a major Academy Award-winning film being aired for the first time on television. And it was the trial of the ultimate in white supremacy, the architects of the genocide against Jews, Unitarians, gays, gypsies, blacks, people of color, the whole 9 yards. It was mesmerizing. And suddenly the film, they stopped and broke into a news broadcast, a special bulletin. And it was the first time I had seen, or anybody saw, other than the people who were there at the time, the beating of the marchers at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, Bloody Sunday. It was no less than horrifying. Given the frame that we were viewing these pictures, which was the trial of the Nazi murderers, the ultimate in racism, brought into our living room. And at that time, as a 15-year-old young man, I made a vow to myself that if ever came down to that, which side of the barricades would I be standing on? Would I be with the police and the clubs, or the marchers being beaten? I chose to be with the marchers every day for the rest of my life. Those are the kind of choices we have to make. I apologize for getting emotional, because what happens to us is dependent upon us. This church is about to embark upon an exploration and an expansion of our relationship with the rest of the world, the rest of the communities of color that surround us. I remember when we had, the church was being used as a meeting ground and a worship place for a lot of the Brazilians that were tending the cranberry bogs and whatnot. I also remember that bullet holes were fired through the sign in front of the church. Make no mistake about it. The attitudes that we decry in the South, the attitudes that we saw at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, with those men in uniform beating the protests and breeding the marches, those have a home here in Kingston. And it is up to us not to fight with violence, but to live by example and lead the kind of people, the kind of movement that we want to be a part of. This is not a time to be passive. I wrote, as many of you know, I was a survivor of child sexual abuse as a young man. And one of the things I wrote about that experience also applies to where we are today. And it goes like this: like snowflakes in a blizzard, each of us is unique. As we struggle to come to terms with our history, know this: none of us can change the past, but we each have within us the power to change the future and the present. That is the power I urge that we as a parish and we as individuals bring to ourselves as we write the next chapter in our story. Write it on purpose, not by accident. Live deliberately, live purposely. And that's essentially it. It's not a rendition of yesterday. It's a journey into tomorrow. And let us do that together as a community of love, passion, and vision. End of sermon.
Thank you, Dennis. I invite you now to join us as we feel the power and the beauty of the music of our closing song.
Okay, the whole community needs to get involved with this. We need singers and we need percussionists. You can be both, but at least choose one, will you? It goes like this. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Try with me. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Mama and Papa are fighting like snakes. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Baby is a-crying like her heart will break. Open the window. Neighbors lock their doors, build fences so high. Can't see what's to discover on the other side. Here we go, percussionists. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly. Open the window, let the dove fly. Borders round countries and borders round the sky. The only borders that close you are the borders round your mind. Some people have money, some people have none. But what's the use of money if your heart's gone numb? Let's do it again. Here we go. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in. This big old world is in a great mess. Open the window, find peace and rest. Open the window, children. Open the window now. Open the window, children. Last time. Open the window, let the dove fly in. Open the window, let the dove fly in.
At this time, we'll be closing the formal part of our service by extinguishing our chalice. So I invite you to do the same. We extinguish our chalice, but not what it represents. Because as Amanda Gorman writes in her final line of The Hill We Climb, for there is always light. If only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it. Thank you to Adam and Dennis for joining this morning. At this time, we will stop our recording of the service to allow sharing of joys and concerns in private community.